morning, everyone. We are just getting everyone in, so just give us a moment and we'll begin shortly. Thank you very much for joining us today. So good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We're letting everyone in, but just one more minute and we should be all ready to go. Jen, you can give me the go ahead when you think that's okay.
I think we're good, Jill.
Great. Okay, I'm getting all my windows settled so I can see what I'm talking about here. Forgive me, everyone. And please know how grateful I am that you are here with us, that's for sure. Today, we are here to talk about data integrity within the material analysis realm in the pharmaceutical industry, specifically when it comes to our tool, the Progeny 1064, this beautiful creature. Somebody we were talking to yesterday said they were blessed to have been using it for the past couple of years, and that made my day, if not my week. So I hope to share some interesting information with you today, specifically, again, about data integrity. So why might you be here with us today? You know, I really want to know. So we're going to pose a quick poll question to you, and we're going to be using these throughout the presentation. I will note you're all on mute. If you feel like you want to ask us a question, please go ahead and use the chat box. Take yourself off of mute if you really want to, you know, share some information with us or ask a question. But please know we're going to take some time at the end of the presentation today to directly address those. If you haven't met me before, my name's Jill Carrero. I'm the Global Business Development Director for Rigaku for the pharmaceutical market. And I'm very happy to be here with you today to talk about our handheld product, the Progeny 1064 Raman, and again, data integrity in the world of pharmaceutical raw materials analysis. I am suspicious that a lot of you have extra time on your hands, right? The global pandemic has created a different working situation for all of us, and it makes it so that we have extra screen time, right? So here we are. But maybe you are just generally curious about global compliance landscape. I'm looking at some of these responses, and I think that the most of you are here for the reason that I would hope that you are here, and that's to figure out what we do to approach your challenges in the global compliance landscape. And I'm very happy to talk with you about that today. So again, thank you for joining with us. 63% of you say, yeah, that's in fact why you're here to join us today. So, and there's probably a reason behind that too. Maybe your company is replacing an older handheld Raman that you might have. Every solution is different, specifically how we deal with data and how we deal with your compliance challenges is very different. So it's a good thing that you're here to learn. Maybe your company is making new products. Man, the global landscape is really going to change for our industry over the coming months and years, I think. None of us are in denial of that. So it's really great to be forward thinking. Everyone meet my rooster if you can hear him. But it's great to be forward thinking and to understand what solutions are out there. So thank you for coming to us about that. If you're making new drug products, you know, maybe you have new raw materials coming in. And so 1064 Raman can certainly, you know, approach some of those materials differently than maybe a 785 instrument could. So understanding how we do compliance is an important part of maybe understanding if you want to use a 1064 based instrument in your work. And then just going to new markets. Maybe you're going to start shipping product to Australia and you have to figure out how we work with Australian conventions. So that's a great reason to be here too. But no matter what, regulations are the real driver, right? That's what kind of makes us all do what we have to do here. it drives the percentage of the raw materials that you test on a day-to-day basis, and your compliance with those regulations and the volumes and the work required and the dollars required to do that work is why you would ever buy a tool like ours. So it's all very much closely related. So I'm going to resist the tempting urge to deep dive into each one of these regulations. If you want to talk with me anytime about specific questions that you have about maybe some of the Pharmacopoeia or different principles and guidelines, please let me know. But I wanted to give you an overview here today. For those of you who don't understand, basically, monographs and chapters and different things like that, this is a great one-stop shop, I would say, to understanding that, monographs and chapters, they provide the specifications, right? They provide the process by which you have to understand what a material is and how it conforms to the specifications that we said that material is. So oftentimes what happens is that a material monograph will reference a certain type of spectroscopic technique or analytical technique, and then another monograph will often reference that technique as well, and then a number of monographs will begin to reference the same technique. And then what happens is that technique, that monograph, becomes a chapter. And that's just kind of the general transition from monographs and chapters and how they tie together, specifically with USP and European Pharmacopoeia, Japanese Pharmacopoeia, but then we also have Anvisa and Envima in South America, Brazil and Argentina, making really strong recommendations to their local pharmaceutical manufacturers about how to make their product and what guidelines to follow. And then we have, of course, all over Asia, different kinds of guidelines to follow. So it's a complex landscape. And we understand that very well. We don't pretend to understand everything that you need to accomplish, but we really want to be a resource to you in understanding how our tool fits in with your maze, so to speak. ALCOA principles, that's just kind of general dictates on how you should behave in doing your scientific endeavor. Whether it's, the first level of principles were ALCOA, and then they came with ALCOA Plus. And I really like ALCOA Plus principles as oh, we really should have, those are the amendments, right? And specifically when it comes to Progeny, I think we've done a really awesome job of kind of looking at those ALCOA Plus principles and providing you a really awesome solution specifically to, kind of the availability of the data and the completeness of the data. Progeny is a really terrific solution when it comes to that, because we just allow you to see much more. Of course, 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, the regulation that governs, all of our solution security and how we sign in and sign out and things like that. There's just so much to worry about, right? And then, of course, at the baseline of it all, just good manufacturing practices and making sure that we're going about our job in a way that, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the line, our science is solid. And so there's quite the maze that you all have to worry about, and by extension, we worry about quite a bit too. It's really all about the data though, right? Progeny 1064, we are a handheld Raman tool. We're a portable spectrometer. It's used for raw material analysis to get your data. Data is collected by the user and it's stored on the portable instrument. You'll connect that instrument to your network, whether it's via a USB or Wi-Fi, and you're gonna back up the data. Your company's SOPs, standard operating practices, they always dictate when the instrument data is backed up to the server. That workflow is particular to your site. It may be at the end of the batch or a shift. But really, data integrity, it's ultimately in your hands, but we want to talk about now how Progeny can work for you in that kind of effort. So what data is available, right? We start there. What data is available and who gets to see it? The most important question, let's start there. All access to Progeny and your data is user level controlled and password protected, both on the instrument and through Rigaku Sync 3. So that is definitely the first level of making sure that we're in line with your needs. It provides you on-screen pass-fail results. So when the user uses the tool, right, they get to see immediately, extemporaneously, the pass-fail results according to the applications that your team has set up on the instrument, right? So there's an onboard proprietary algorithm, and it results in a correlation coefficient value. And that correlation coefficient value is basically a description of the accordance of the spectrum you just took of your sample with the reference spectrum that you have fed to the instrument during your method development validation process. Now, that correlation coefficient, that's settable by you. Standards are usually around 0.95, but Progeny allows you to do different applications. Say you have a polymorph application or something like that, that you need to have a tighter correlation coefficient to separate a subset of materials. Well, that's controllable by you, and maybe you want to set that to 0.97. That pass-fail result is then electronically approved and signed off on the instrument. And then we move the data over to where it's going to live, right? Where it's going to live permanently. But before you do that, you have that ability to look at the scans, stack your spectra, overlay, do all the things that you might want to do immediately with the data on the instrument. We could talk about that a different time, or you can look at the previous webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago to learn more about that kind of capacity. But it allows you to understand that the data is your data, and when you want it, it's there. And you have access to understand more about your scans immediately, or, again, we allow you that full level of confidence in your data kind of management through the process to where it exists 5 years down the line, and you can go back and look at it. PDFs, CSVs, TXTs, XML files, SPC data files, they're all available from the scan data. Batch reporting, those functionalities really allow some workflow customization so that, if you have specific things that you want to note with your data, that's not data per se. Say your organization really needs to note the name of a vendor. Every single time you receive a certain batch of material, you want to note the vendor as well. Or say you've got a mixed lot of materials from different vendors, and you want to scan the entire group of containers, but some are from vendor A and some are from vendor B. Progeny allows you a really easy way to customize the workflow on the instrument so that you can note that really quickly on the fly. And I think that really lends to your overall compliance package. Similarly, the ability to take photographs with the instrument. I can't tell you how often our customers say this becomes an integral part of their raw material identification and incoming receipt workflow process. There's a tiny little camera right there on the Progeny. And it's so simple for your users, for your incoming receivers, to take a picture of samples, to take a picture of that container that when you open the lid, it's got white powder outside of the liner versus inside the liner where it should be. These things should be noted because they're part of your quality inspection process, but it's very difficult without kind of integrated technology like this to note it and make it part of your solution and your process. So that's why we think Progeny kind of lends to some more strong compliance. A quick note on library building, because it's kind of the basis of where data decisions are made, right? I just said we have a correlation coefficient, and it goes back to the reference spectrum that you fed the library, right? Well, that library is of your design. The Progeny comes with an onboard library of over 12,000 items. Now, as most of you know, if you're using a handheld Raman device, it's important to consider that everything that you do with your instrument must be traceable, including the library and the references within that library. So, we allow you very easily to add items to your own library and to add them to this master library. These spectra should always come from traceable samples. These spectra should always be well-characterized retains or purchase standards. And it's very easy to go about the process of adding spectra to the library It's usually just about a single scan for the reference spectrum, and then maybe 5 to 9, depending on packaging and different kind of considerations for what's in your library and correlation and validation considerations, but 5 to 9 other samples, whether they're cross-lot variations and things like that, that your validation team will use during your method development and validation process to understand the robustness of those relationships of the spectra, the specificity, if you will, between spectra in your library. It's just important to kind of note it because it's the first step of your process in using a handheld Raman, and it's so very important to understand that, you know, basically crud in equals crud out, to use one of my kids' languages. You really have to feed the instrument representative information about your samples. So cross vendors, usually we don't see any need to have multiple cross vendors as the reference, but you're definitely going to want to incorporate that as part of your validation process. So I want to ask you a question about connecting to, you know, your network. And I think I actually skipped a polling question that I was interested in because I get so interested in my presentation here. But Jen, if you want to ask the folks here, I would be very interested if you're using a handheld instrument, how it is that you'd like to connect your instrument, because, you know, with a Progeny, connecting can be done via USB or Wi-Fi connection. And that's going to be definitely determined by what your workflow needs. For us, we see about a 50-50 split, and that's a surprise to me because once upon a time, I didn't have access to Wi-Fi, right? I didn't have access to a tool that allowed, you know, our customers to do this, and I wasn't so sure people would, but absolutely, people love Wi-Fi, and I can't blame them because who wants cables, right? And the ability to put your data where you want it without connecting is a really unique feature that Progeny allows you. Now I'm looking at some of these polling questions, and it looks like most of you, about 50% of you, are using USB straight, and then the rest of you are using a mix of a Wi-Fi, or you've never used, about 25% of you use Wi-Fi. And then there's a whole bunch of folks out there that have never connected a Raman, so that's great. It's great to be learning about how we do it. But there you go. Over 50% of you use direct USB connection. Tried and true. We understand that, but know that there are other options available. That said, this is how we do it. And I want to just kind of walk through some of these steps quickly, but it allows you a little insight to understand some questions that might pop up in your process and how you'd employ it and things like that. First and foremost, it's really easy to install a Progeny, and to connect the device, it's really just a matter of a mini USB, plugging it into the bottom of the device here. Of course, there's a simple driver that must be installed. We supply you that driver or a secure link to that driver. Wi-Fi connection, you know, you can do that direct to your network router. You can use a hotspot. You can use peer-to-peer connections, but it's as simple as, you know, basically switching on the Wi-Fi on your Progeny and then connecting to your Wi-Fi network. It's a really, really smart solution because as long as your PC with Rigaku Sync 3 and your Wi-Fi network and your Progeny are all sharing and everybody's got the right sign-offs and password permissions, this is a really secure way to get your data where you need it to be, from the dock up to, you know, a review lab PC without connecting. It's a really awesome solution. So backing up that data, we also allow you for 2 solutions. So you can go Wi-Fi and you can go USB when you connect. And if you want to back up your data, there are 2 solutions with Progeny. I'm going to focus today on solution number 1, but I want to show you, or I want to just jump over to solution number 2. Has been the way that we've done it for a long time. Solution number 1 is a new solution. Rigaku Sync 3 has just been released by our organization. We're very proud of this portion of our compliance package because it really allows you a level of robustness that we don't think is available in any other solution on the market. It's essentially a small software package that's installed on your local PC. So that makes it the biggest differentiator between how we have formally allowed you to acquire the data off of your instrument and put it into your secure server location, which was a web page based portal. Now Rigaku Sync 3 is installed on your local PC that has access to your secure server. The end user will connect to the device via USB or Wi-Fi, as I've just mentioned, to the PC on that secure server path. So essentially when you set up Rigaku Sync 3, and I'll show you how this is done, you're telling it this is the secure location where data is going to go. And if your Wi-Fi network also shares that path, you are basically at a place where you can initiate a secure move of transfer of data files from your PC over to, from your Progeny over to your secure location. A permanent database of the raw data can always reside on the instrument if you choose to do so in either option. So that's Rigaku Sync 3. It's a localized software that allows you to very securely move data files over from your Progeny onto your instrument or onto your secure server, forgive me. It allows you to do this again through Wi-Fi or USB. It will move your data into your data sync database. And then from that place, you can do so much. You can leave the data there. It's there. It acts as a secure, hands-off file transfer. The data is where it needs to be securely forever and ever. But it also is a really easy to use graphical interface if you want to take a look at your data. And here I show a quick example of what Rigaku Sync 3 looks like on your PC. You'll see scan overlays. You'll see a list of the scans that have been performed. You see a list of the instruments that are on my network, so to speak. Here I have 2 instruments listed. It allows you different, settings and things like that that we'll delve a little bit more into. It allows you to sort and search and to look more, again, closely at any data that you want to. From this point forward, you could also export into any native file reviewing program that you might have on your local PC, Omnic or something like that. So some of the features, and this essentially is a setting screen highlighted here because it highlights, again, some of the little details that make Progeny and Rigaku Sync 3 fit in with your compliance efforts. We made it because it allows you that blind backup of data, right? We want you to have that ability to have an operator that's using the instrument, that's collecting data, to sync the data into a secure location and not let that operator see or touch or move or change that data. That is, key. And there's different things, different permissions that you can allow, and some of that is listed here. So first and foremost is that you can set the operator and developer sync permissions, right? So if you want your operator to be allowed to sync, great. If they can't, you don't have to allow them to. If you want an auto sync process, so essentially this is just terrific, right? If you want at the end of your workflow, your operator to be able to go over and just connect to a USB or connect to your Wi-Fi network and have an auto sync process start so that the data is automatically moved into secure server location, that can be set here. It also allows you to set, I mentioned previously that a permanent resident copy of data can exist on Progeny. And this is a really strong kind of backup point to how Progeny allows another level of compliance to your solution. Now, we have actually received some feedback for customers that they would like to have 3 years of data on their instrument, or the last 2 years maybe of data resident on their instrument. But prior to that, we can clear that off. So we changed things here to allow that customers can now clear a level of device, say everything that was created prior to 2 years ago can be cleared off the device and stored just in an archive location on your server. This is the Rigaku Sync 3 home screen, a quick overview. So if you look at the top left there, it's a very small icon, but it's a little tiny green key. And that's essentially login credentials to get into Sync 3. And that matches up with login credentials that you've allowed on your Progeny. So it doesn't have to be exactly the same person, but doesn't have to have the same rights to be able to log into Sync 3 here to grab the data off of your Progeny. Some basic notes around the sync command. It only syncs over new stuff. So it's fast, it's super fast. You can create reports from the data. So a great feature about sync is it just moves what you want it to move. So it's always going to move the raw data. And you can tell it if you want it to generate automatically also a PDF with every single time you scan. Or say, you know that you're going to move SBC data every single time. So you have the Progeny sync over every single time that raw data, along with maybe, a PDF, or it's a really controlled solution. But you can also do that after the fact. So if you want to go in after the fact and create a PDF report from some batch line of data here, it's really easy to do so. I also note here, one of my favorite features about Rigaku Sync 3, especially when it kind of drives back to some of those ALCOA principles. And it's this feature that kind of shows via these colored icons on the right here, what types of data have been generated from what scans. I know that this is a feature that our customers definitely will love if they haven't already learned to love it. So this is something that I really enjoy showing folks about Rigaku Sync 3. Some of the setup logistics, and I have a couple of folks on the line here with us today that are just highly amazing people in my perspective in terms of their ability to help you achieve your goals around, compliance, but also applications. So Dr. Suzanne Schreier and Jason Walker are both on the phone here. They've been answering some of your questions. I just want to acknowledge them and thank them very much. But if you have any questions further to what I'm going to discuss here today, please go ahead and answer or ask them on the chat, and we'll make sure to address them too. But that said, there are so many things that can be controlled with kind of how Progeny translates your data from its original home to the sync location on your secure server. And of course, we've talked about what kind of data is generated and when that data is generated. If you clear the data over a date range, also report fields. That's something that I think folks are really going to appreciate about Rigaku Sync 3 is that you can customize your report fields specific to your language. You can, of course, add your logo and things like that, as you typically would be able to do. But some of the ability to add fields both while you're doing your analysis on Progeny, so the ability to add a vendor field or appearance field and things like that, that combined with the kind of the back end presentation of data really is such a complete solution, and to say, this is not only my spectroscopic data, this is not just my pass fail type of data. Here's my complete picture of what I received, right? That's really what we're supposed to be doing here when we do our raw materials ID. Setting the path to a server address is done using a UNC network path, forgive me. So essentially what this allows is that if you have a user that's locked out from a folder using NTFS permission control in the end, then there's a little service that runs in the background called Rigaku service, right? And that basically allows you to enter your credentials for that user so that even if they don't have read and write access to that folder, they can still sync they can still, you know, sync over to that folder. And it seems simple, but it is such an essential part of how this tool, you know, kind of solves a compliance challenge. So you're going to allow your user to be locked out from the end game, no changing data, but that user can dump data in there all the time. And then you've got your developer, you've got your administrator level that can go in and look at the data and create reports and things like that. I'm just going to look at the questions. Operating system, great question. Windows 10. So I see a question about storage limits for data stored on the Progeny. You know, once upon a time, the internal storage of Progeny, which was much smaller than it is now, we estimate that, you know, the lifetime of your Progeny will probably outlast the size of your internal storage. That said, you can set some sort of date range. We would suggest, again, maybe any data that was acquired over 2 years old, that's cleared from your Progeny. So I'm just addressing your question, Monica, by the way. How are you? Yes, Rigaku Sync 3 can certainly be used for Progeny LT instruments. And that said, I should just put out there, if you are a current user, if you are using a Progeny, if you are using a Progeny LT, please reach out to us. Right now, we want to get you Rigaku Sync 3 free of charge. We want you to put it on your PC and we want you to make the most of it and give us lots of great feedback. So the results, we have talked a little bit about the available files for the results. I'm just gonna quick time check. Forgive me, we're a little bit over, but we're almost done here, folks. You can look at those results from any secure PC. So if you have a PC that's linked to your secure server location, you can open up that data and take a look at it using Rigaku Sync 3. Any of those file formats. So certainly, you know, you can look at a PDF anywhere you want to look at a PDF, right? Results will include application, file name, scan conditions, the match results, the CC value, overlay of spectra, and then PDF reports also include the required e-signatures and company logo and attached sample photographs that I mentioned earlier. So that's a really, really great feature, again, that I will highlight here. Some important questions that I just wanted to essentially end with, because I know they may be on your mind, and I'm kind of looking down through to address some quick questions. Yes, we have a full IQ/OQ package. We have a full you know, SOPs for Rigaku Sync 3. We've got everything ready for you folks. If you're ready to use Rigaku Sync 3, we've got everything ready for you to employ it in a fashion that you need to, with all the paperwork, essentially. Those questions. Can the end user make any changes to the data after it's synced with Rigaku Sync 3? Well, that's the point, definitely not. It's definitely the key functionality of Rigaku Sync 3 is to lock out that end user from changing any of the data after it's been created, if you choose to do so. Is the syncing automatic? Yes, it's so cool. See that docking station right there? That's another option for making the sync process automatic at your site. And I think it's just a really cool way to do it. And it's a place for the Progeny to live at night, if you will. So you can have that docking station networked in, and just by kind of laying the Progeny down into the docking station, it's going to auto sync the data, and then charge a second battery, and be there ready for the next shift of receipt. And finally, can you see more? Absolutely. I'd be happy to show you one-on-one or one on your team, firsthand demonstration. Well, not firsthand, virtual demonstration, as we do everything here nowadays. But a demonstration of Rigaku Sync 3, how we connect, how it pops right up, and how you can see the data immediately, how you can move things around. We're certainly happy to show you more. It's a little bit much to get into a public kind of demonstration like this, but just contact me and I'd be happy to talk with you more about that. Please let me say again how thankful we are that you've joined us. We know that you have lots of options essentially for webinars nowadays. Everybody is trying to offer you great content. I hope that you've learned something today about our tool, and if you have any further questions, please do reach out. We have another webinar on some awesome application stuff in a couple of weeks. Please don't miss that one. Dr. Suzanne Schreier has been doing some amazing application work. Valerian Sabota, Dr. Valerian Sabota. I mean, we have some awesome stuff to share with you, so please make sure you attend that. And again, if you have any further questions about Rigaku Sync 3 or Progeny, I am here. My name is Jill Carrero. You can always reach out to me to answer those questions for you. I'm going to skip these and then leave you with that. Thanks again, everyone. I appreciate your time, and I hope that you all stay safe and take care of yourselves. Thank you very much.